think you've been misrepresented a little bit, to be honest, by some of the media that I've seen, because I saw them as, it seemed to me that they were using you as a trophy. Like, look at this guy, look at this idiot, what he used to believe. And it wasn't clear what you used to believe from some of the interviews. They just, it felt to me they were being presented a bit as a trophy. So I was pleased when I got your actual content, because it's not as described.
Well, it's a really deep subject, and to be fair, these people don't know anything about it. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help them as well. Trying to help them understand this world. Don't fob it off. Don't, underestimate it.
Alrighty then, and welcome along to the Cult of Nick. I be Nick Margerrison, and on today's podcast we have an incredible guest for you. We have Brent Lee. I'm going to call him a podcaster. I was just discussing moments before with him as to whether or not he's still a musician, but I remember him, I think, as a musician and a podcaster and a content creator and also a conspiracist. But those days are over. He's changed now, and he's being defined by the BBC and a lot of mainstream media as an ex-conspiracy theorist who's seen the error of his ways and is now here to help us out of the conspiracy rabbit hole. Can't wait to talk to him. I've been really enjoying listening to some stuff, and his name's Brent Lee. Thank you very much for joining us, Brent, on the Cult of Nick. Nice to have you along.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. Pleasure.
So did I get the intro right there? You are no longer a conspiracy theorist, is that right?
Yeah, essentially. I'm no longer a conspiracist. See, I used to have a very overarching belief in conspiracies. I kind of believed the Illuminati New World Order style conspiracies is essentially what became QAnon. That same sort of stuff, except for I didn't really believe in our leaders or anything like that. But yeah, I was very, very, very heavy into conspiracies. Princess Diana was a sacrifice, and 9/11 even was a sacrifice, and all these kind of things. But I did eventually come away from it.
Okay, let's flesh some of that out.
Yeah,
because I think you and I probably have been on similar journeys. You've been defined as a conspiracist between 2003 and 2018. So what is it in 2003 as opposed to the year before or the year before that?
Okay, let's go to the years before that. Obviously, I'd heard things like JFK, Roswell, etc. Different sort of fun conspiracy theories. I liked X-Files, all that sort of stuff, but I'd never really thought that believing any of that sort of defines who you are. Mm-hmm. And along comes 2003, and essentially I started watching 9/11 truther documentaries. That leads on to secret society documentaries. And this kind of gives me this idea that, the government are in fraternities, and with 9/11, they do, terrorist attacks on themselves. And that's where I start becoming a conspiracy activist. That kind of drives my political activism, was this belief in the conspiracy theory.
2001, obviously, 9/11, the attacks of September the 11th in America. Very, very traumatic period for a lot of people to witness that. And it's hard now, as we speak about it, to really reimagine that moment. But I happened to be on air at the time, and I was put on a live news broadcast in Sheffield. And I was on a radio station called Hallam FM, which was covering most of South Yorkshire. And so I was actually doing the breaking news bit. And at the time, I'd just read, maybe the year before, David Icke. And I was a huge fan of science fiction, and I didn't take this seriously, his work at all. But in it, he talked about how there were going to be fake terror attacks. And in the newsroom, in an actual real newsroom, as I was taking the info from people, like proper journalists are calling in from America to give us briefs and updates. It was part of Independent Radio News Network. It's a big company. I remember thinking, oh God, is this what he was talking about? Is this that? And I had my moment right there whilst I was watching 9/11 happen, where I questioned the nature of what it was we were being told, because it was so apparent to me that I had no idea what was happening in New York, and yet here I was being paid money to tell everyone what was happening in New York. It was a strange experience. And so then if we go to 2002 and 3, where you start getting involved in conspiracy theory, there was a very famous video which was trending on Google videos at the time, and it was called Loose Change. And that argued that the 9/11 attacks were an inside job. It wasn't made by Alex Jones and InfoWars. It was made by another bunch of people who were friends with him. And that was the big one for me. I remember watching that, Loose Change 2, I think it was, blew my mind, Brent. I believed it.
Yeah, so did I. But I think Loose Change actually doesn't come out till 2005.
I bet you're correct, because you are the expert on this. So yeah, take it from there. So explain a little bit. Let us into that.
Yeah, and the second edition is the one that was actually produced by Alex Jones, but it wasn't made by him.
Right.
Yeah.
The terrorist attacks of 9/11 provoked a wide range of responses.
It's difficult to find the words to describe the feeling in New York City today,
including at least one sophisticated piece of misinformation, a viral internet documentary series called Loose Change.
When Loose Change came out, it was a game changer.
Loose Change proposed a number of unproven and false conspiracy theories, including the suggestion that the U.S. government was behind the attacks. Journalist Jonathan Kay has written extensively on conspiracy theories. He explains,
These were the first people who took the conspiracist culture of the internet and said, let's turn this into something that looks like fairly slick entertainment. And because it's entertaining, people are going to watch it. And because it's slick video, people are going to think it's authoritative.
Loose Change really broke the internet when it comes to 9/11 conspiracy theories. It really did, present such a high quality, concise argument with lots and lots of holes in the official story, allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it came out thinking, oh, this is like a really good, concise way of telling this. Now I can actually share this with people. Because I would tell them about it, because I'd watched other 9/11 documentaries before that. Hidden in Plain Sight was one of them. Mm-hmm. Another one was called Illuminati 911.
Mm-hmm. These ring a bell, yeah.
Yeah, those were like kind of the ones that were going around.
I'll tell you, I read a quote
at the very beginning.
I read a quote of yours that said that you were in a band, and yet your most fun thing to do when you've got all your sort of your fans and your groupies, right, was to go home and watch David Icke videos and smoke the wrong stuff watching that. And I remember thinking, yeah, I would have got on well with you there. That was my idea of a good time as well. And I watched loads of these things. I can't name them all, and I clearly don't know the dates when they all came out. I'm not an expert, but I certainly consumed a lot of that stuff. And it was pretty convincing back then as well, because the internet was a different beast. You could go online.
Oh, it really was.
You could go online and find all sorts of well-developed theories that hadn't really been challenged, that, our young minds would feed on. And yeah, then we lived in a world controlled by, a dangerous government that wanted to organize false flag attacks in order to carry out a war. Not a point of view that I moved away from, really, as time went on, because obviously we had a war and the war was justified using those attacks. So it's quite a difficult position for you and me and other people of our generation to be in, I think, where we were seeing this information and being told that these attacks were not as we were being told, and then our friends and our relatives were being sent off to fight in a war. It's an intense time.
Yeah. Say for me, like between 2001 and before I saw the conspiracy theory videos, I was supportive of the war in Afghanistan. I was very in tune with what was going on geopolitically, especially with Islamic terrorism. It was something I was actually interested in, so when on 9/11, the minute that we saw the second tower get hit, the second plane come in, I just looked straight at my mum and said, this is Osama. I knew straight away who it was, because I knew the tension that had been building, the USS Cole being bombed 6 months prior. And I was very aware of it. So I knew that was them. It had to be them. And 1993, the previous World Trade bombing, I knew that it was still people connected to that group. So I knew, I did think straight away, oh, that's straight up, it's Osama. I was saying it before they even said it on the news, because I was aware. So I'm just saying this because, like, when it came to Afghanistan, I was like, fine, yeah, go get him. Like, he has just like wreaked havoc. He's literally taken the piss. So yes, go get him. Then 2003 rolls around and they want to start going to Iraq. And that's where I'm like, become a bit more of an activist, thinking, hold on, I don't think we should be going to Iraq. This, it's not justified. And then the weapons of mass destruction lies were going around. And, I could see straight away the government's lying. Bush and Blair are lying about this. Even the UN is saying, like, they're lying. We can't find any of these weapons. That kind of made me start thinking, there's something else going on. These people are prepared to lie to go to war. And so the 9/11 documentaries really, really spoke to me then when it came to furthering the war on terror, and not just this war to go and get bin Laden.
You see, I wonder, 2003 is the year that we go into Iraq. That's the year you're defined as becoming a conspiracist. I mean, do we want to define the difference there? A conspiracy theorist, someone who's interested in the theories. A conspiracist, a bit like a capitalist or a Marxist, or is it an Islamist, is someone who defines their politics in line with conspiracy. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a political ideology. Just like you just mentioned, political ideologies and like religious ideologies. Those are, I'd say conspiracism is the same thing. It's a political, sometimes religious ideology. And it encompasses everything that you look at, just like any other ideology does.
Because that's really interesting. I think maybe if we think of it as, from that point of view, a conspiracist, I think that it's probably around that point that I became aware of the fact that there was a political movement that was not attached to the Labour Party or the Tory Party or any of the other political parties, as far as I can tell. And it was a point of view, and conspiracism sums it up neatly. And I'll be honest, Brent, I think I was seduced by it to a certain extent because, like I say, in that context, in that time when we're going to war in Iraq and ostensibly we're told it's connected to the attacks of that were organised from Afghanistan, it's a very confusing period, and even people in mainstream politics had difficulty stringing it together. So you, in 2003, become inspired by the war in Iraq? I mean, did you have any direct connection to that? Were you a military person yourself, or did you have friends or family who did that?
So my stepfather was in the U.S. Air Force.
Right, gotcha.
He was serving at the time. He was probably too old for active service when it came to Iraq War II, but Iraq War I in the 90s, like I was scared that he was going to go to it, and he might have had to go, but he eventually, they didn't need him to go.
Yeah,
it's definitely connected to. This is why I was interested in geopolitics, like all my life, because we were bombed in Germany, like the base that I was on. When I was a child, there was a bomb on there. So it was something that I was always taught to be vigilant and pay attention to the kind of threats in the air, essentially. Every day that we'd turn up to the base, we'd know like the threat level. So it's something that has always been on my mind when it comes to, the military and the government. And yes, I do feel connected to that.
That makes a lot of sense. Meaning it's not abstract to you. That's the point I'm getting to, because obviously wars happen, people forget about them, they don't really care. And yet if you've got a connection to it, then vigilance makes a lot of sense. So I'm trying to place you. You get involved in being a conspiracist, but you're also a musician as well. Do you want to explain a little bit about that? I want to context it even further.
Yeah. All my life, pretty much, I've been a musician. I got a guitar when I was 10 years old, but I start joining a band in 1997. I'm in that band basically till I think 2008 or 9. And obviously in that alternative scene, you meet other people that talk about that sort of stuff as well. You know, I'm sure that like you've met plenty of people that are into this stuff. Yeah, I was in a band, man.
Well, it's a bit more than that, though, isn't it? I mean, didn't you do music about conspiracy theories? You had quite a following. And if I remember, I mean, I know you went on the David Icke forum. I mean, you know, you were a hitter in this area, man. And what I'm trying to say to people is people would rock up, they'd watch your gigs, you'd enlighten them about the shape-shifting space wizards that rule the world. And then you'd probably go home and watch Loose Change too. You know, there's parts of that life that are kind of fun, you know, and I can relate to that. I can really relate to that because, look, strange time. The 90s occur, the 90s are great fun, and then after that, there's a sort of, you know, people seem to lose their way a bit. Tony Blair being the sort of classic emblematic figure of that era, and let's get into that. For people who don't know, Tony Blair convinced people to back the war in Iraq on the basis of a conspiracy theory. So he believed there was a conspiracy with some weapons of mass destruction, and he couldn't give you proof yet, but you know, he's got the proof somewhere. And if you just read the research, you'd know all about it. The parallels are astonishing. And that's what he was. He was a conspiracy theorist, wasn't he? And he got his way, and he did a lot of harm by pushing those stories across. That we, who grew up under his premiership, were attracted to conspiracy theories as always seemed a bit more than a coincidence to me, because we had a conspiracy theorist run the country, you know, and that we react to it with a little bit of disbelief. I think we can cut some flack for ourselves here. So, like I say, I'm picturing you're there, you're a conspiracist, and your worldview is defined by it. And I want to bring you to a moment that I know was very important for you, the attacks of 7/7. Now, they were different to obviously happening in America. They were happening here in the UK. And as they were happening, a lot of people who were following them were of the conspiracist mindset, which frankly was not the case in 2001 in September. Do you want to talk us through that and explain a bit about what happened with you there?
Yeah. Eventually, like, I started to try and find other people that I could speak to. So I'd look online, obviously, and eventually I came across the David Icke forum in 2005. I spent so much time on there speaking to people and decoding reality, you know, breaking down the conspiracies and what's going on. And one morning we're there, and the forums just starts buzzing. And it's because it's 7/7, you know, 7th of July, 2005, 4 bombs go off. But at the very first moment, we didn't hear anything about bombs. It's just that there was a power surge, you know, and the story evolves into eventually being bombs. But I was on the forum with everyone, and basically everyone just decided, right, take down notes of everything that's going on. Find out, like, you know, put your news bulletins on, put your radios on, just take everything in. So we started relaying anything that we saw on the TV or we had heard on the radio into the forum, collecting all the reports from the day, and eventually, like, finding all the holes in the reporting, all the things that they changed. And basically, we form what is the conspiracy theory around 7/7 on the forum, like over that 2 weeks, from the first bombing until the next bombing after that didn't like work, you know, the failed bombing. Yeah, and we just continued just to build what was the conspiracy theory. At least that's what I feel like it was. You know, I feel like there was just a small community of people on that forum that wanted to figure out what happened on that day. And we just like was able to collect everything and put it there.
In a nutshell, can you give us the conspiracy theory? What was it?
The conspiracy theory was that the 4 suicide bombers were actually part of a drill. They didn't know that they were going down to commit suicide and blow themselves up. The bombs were already on the trains, and there was a possibility that the bombers didn't get killed in the explosion, but had been taken off to Canary Wharf, where they were assassinated. because there was reports of this happening. There was reports of allegedly of police shooting terrorists in Canary Wharf. And basically, the whole conspiracy was that these guys didn't play any part of it. It was a false flag. It was the government. Mm-hmm. And it was to gain further support from the citizens to continue this war on terror, because Islamism was a complete threat.
Mm. I'm aware from your story that you had a similar moment to me, which is that the idea that this was faked, then with 7/7, although I know this escalated with later attacks, 7/7 was the first time I saw or heard conspiracists confronting victims of a terror attack and arguing with them about what happened.
Yeah.
It turned my stomach at the time because it did nothing about it worked for me. And there were a few names around that point in the conspiracy theory community who were pushing this idea that there were people who were victims in that attack who were government shills, meaning being paid by the government. It was a tricky one for me. That was the moment when conspiracy theory stopped being fun. But it stopped being fun. I remember thinking, well, hang on a minute. What are these guys doing here? What if you've got someone who's lost a limb or whatever, and you're going to debate that with them? That just seemed so strange to me. Do you want to take over from that?
Yeah, I thought it was. I always thought it was strange. I have always been, against harassing normal people. As an activist, I always thought like you should be like speaking to the powerful. So like I would support, say, things like door-stopping Peter Powers. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Peter Powers was also allegedly this guy who was running the exercise that day, because he was a part of some firm that did run some exercises, and I would like cheer people that would like doorstop him or harass him, which
let's give a bit more on that.
I feel
people,
bad.
Yeah, let's just give a little bit more on him for people that don't know. I don't know whether or not it was the David Icke Forum that put this piece forward, but he was interviewed on Radio 5 and he said that he was arranging an exercise which involved a very similar scenario at pretty much the same places where the attacks had taken place.
The thing that concerns me is that what are we doing for the thousands of men and women actually who are in London working? And I say that because at 9:30 this morning we were actually running an exercise for over a company of 1,000 people in London based on simultaneous bombs going off precisely at the railway stations that happened this morning. So I still have the hairs on the back of my legs standing upright.
To get this quite straight, you were running an exercise to see how you would cope with this, and it happened while you were running the exercise?
Precisely. And it was about 9:30 this morning. We planned this for a company, and for obvious reasons I don't want to reveal their name, but if they're listening they'll know it. And we had a room full of crisis managers for the first time they met. And so within 5 minutes we made a pretty rapid decision. This is the real one. And so we went through the correct drills of activating crisis management procedures to jump from slow time to quick time thinking and so on.
And he became a central part of the notion that this attack was arranged as an exercise, which then became real world, right?
Totally. But there's certain details that were like left out, obviously, which we can get into if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get into it. I mean, look, like I say, I talk about these things. I'm not an expert. I remember that chap, and there's 101 loose threads and all the different news stories I've ever covered. That's one of them. That's one of them.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened with that guy? Why was he arranging an exercise at the same place and so on? Did you get anything with that story?
So the people that he was arranging the exercise for, that's kept under cover. All right. And it's because of confidentiality agreements. All right, fine, whatever. But the premise of the exercise itself was not about like what would happen at those 4 locations. It's what would happen if bombs went off or whatever. What would they do in their building? How would they keep them safe? And that would be what the exercise was about. If there was bombs basically going off around London. How do we lock down this place to ensure that there's not like a further attack here? Whoever these people were that he was working for obviously felt that they were targets of Islamism. So that was kind of what the tabletop exercise was about, you know, and the 4 locations weren't like, they weren't pinpoint locations. They were all the postcodes of where these, you know, if these 4 attacks in this proximity happened, and that's how he had planned it. He didn't literally say like that station, this station, on a bus in this square, any of that. Like that's not the details of the actual exercise.
So in his initial,
I found that enlightening.
Yeah, in his initial testimony, maybe he over-egged the pudding a bit when he was on Radio 5, saying, it was exactly the same exercise. I'm following that. and then maybe the details didn't quite match up so much. Right, so he got doorstepped, So people having a go at him, you may support that, but having a go at someone who is, I don't know, a window cleaner and just happened to be caught up in it, that would have been beyond the pale, even for old school Brent, who was a conspiracist.
Hey, this is why I was so mad, man. The government, in my eyes, had attacked our people. You know, they were killing our people in our streets. That's why I was angry with 9/11. Like at the end of the day, like I said, my stepdad's American. He's in the Air Force. I've got 4 stepsisters. Like I've gone to American schools practically for all my life. Like all my friends, like from childhood, are Americans. So watching that happen on 9/11, it was like really, like it touched me. You know, that's I'm half American, half English, even though I'm an English citizen, but I've always considered myself half and half. You know, so I thought like that was like nearly 3,000 citizens killed by a government. And then same here, 52 citizens killed here. That's what made me angry. You know, that's why I took it to an activist level. And, you know, this is where it goes into, obviously, with my music. Like, the best way I felt like I could express myself was always through music. So I put my politics and my activism like into the music, have that as a channel for it, you know?
So your intent there, what did you expect would happen if you put out this sort of content? What was your goal, I guess is what I'm saying? What, a revolution, a rebellion, a change? What was it?
Yeah, whatever we decided, you know, as a people, whatever we got to. Like my purpose, I felt like with my music and everything, was never to wake anyone up. I didn't feel like it was our responsibilities to go and shake people and wake them up. Let the world wake them up themselves. You know, that's how I woke up. That's how everyone I knew woke up, because they had to face it themselves. You know, so my message was my thing was just always to be the welcoming party. When you do wake up, here's this community. Hey, here's all my music. Here's all my friends and all of their music. And here's all this creativity that you can all go into. And, you know, here's all these other groups that you can go speak to. Just be some sort of welcoming party to the people that woke up.
Yeah, I mean, as you described that, Brent, I have to explain to people who are listening that the field within which conspiracy theory took place in the time when you describe was a little bit more like the sort of, you'd meet people who might go to the Glastonbury Festival and hippies and stuff like that. It's less true nowadays. I think maybe the field of conspiracy theory is a little bit more angry and has some quite grim-faced people who want to talk about masculinity and stuff. You know, it's a very different vibe to what it used to be. It's a lot more tough guy stuff. And the world you're describing, I remember, and generally there was a point in the past when being a kind of hippie type person did involve questioning authority and wondering if businesses had our best interests at heart. It's a form of hippiedom I'd love to see come back, to be honest, Brent, but it's faded away for a bit for now. So you would welcome people as they come into this field, and you'd show them all the glories of being awake. Is that right? Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, like feeling like you're not on your own anymore. You know, because that there's this period, like when you're getting into this stuff, like you feel like nobody understands me. I'm just starting to understand this thing, and no one's going to understand a word that I'm talking about. If I go and tell anyone this, they're going to think I am nuts. I know how important it was to find that community first in David Icke's forum, and then after that, like moving on to MySpace. MySpace was like the pinnacle for me. It was so much fun. The people that you got to meet over the world was just fantastic, and I wanted to, you know, build upon that. Definitely, and I know, like for myself, it was helpful to have that there. So if anyone else could come in and this is already there for them, you know, it would be good.
So I'm thinking to myself, I mean, I've probably encountered your work. Like I say, it was certainly my pastime to read through conspiracy theory stuff. And we're coming more towards the time when I would have been sat on the David Icke forum getting the Kerrang radio show together in this story here. So Iraq happens, as I say, Tony Blair, you could pretty convincingly argue, is pushing a conspiracy theory. Off we go into Iraq.
No, he's just pushing a lie.
Yeah, sure. But I mean,
at the end of the day, he's just pushing a lie.
Sure. But I mean, you know, you could argue that that's what conspiracy theorists do, depending on what the conspiracy theory is. But what I thought was interesting is as his time comes to an end and we move into the sort of copies of him, so you have David Cameron and all these other characters, I felt the conspiracy theory narrative started to wobble. And the question I was always asking myself is what would prove this wrong? So it's like a silver bullet question for any belief system that I fall into. Hang on a minute, what would prove this wrong? What's the silver bullet? And certain things started to happen as time was passing that made me question the narrative, the conspiracy theory narrative. What about your good self? Because we're heading towards 2012 and the world was supposed to end then in the conspiracist narrative, if I remember correctly, or aliens were going to land, one of the two. 2012 was a big year. Terence McKenna had talked about it before he died. I was excited about it. How's Brent feeling as he's heading towards the Olympics?
If you asked me that in, say, 2005 to 2008, I would have thought, yeah, something big is going to happen. Mayan calendar, Planet X might be coming round.
Yeah, that was one.
Cataclysms.
That's right. Planet X is on the way, Brent. That's hitting us in 2012. Exactly. The phone lines went mental for that one on Kerrang. People believed it.
Yeah, you know, it could have been anything. Like, it was predicted that it would be something, but like, to be honest, between sort of say 2008 or 10 or something, I started to not think that was necessarily true.
Right.
Who was the guy? Like Carl Johannemann or something like that. I can't remember the guy's name, unfortunately, but he had written this book about 2012 and Mayan calendar. And he was basically saying, it's not a cataclysm. This is just marking like parts of our evolution.
Right.
And like, his theory like really did kind of sort of make sense, and it kind of moved like the cycles through the Mayan calendar get shorter and shorter as up until 2012, and that kind of like showed the progression of society as well, like our relationship with technology and all that sort of thing. So to me, it sort of made sense, and I started to think, okay, there's not going to be any cataclysm or anything like this. This is good. But I tell you what, man, December 21st or whatever, I was thinking, what if it is? Like me and my partner both sat here just thinking, well, it might be all over tomorrow. If it was fun, right?
Well, I mean, to give, this well worth a Google, and I love the concept of aeonics is what it is. So that there's something called a great year that stretches out over many thousands of years, that then it changes at certain different dates. And what people would argue is that in 2012, we would move from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and there were different dates put forward for it. The first time I ever heard of this idea was 1989, the harmonic convergence, I think. But anyway, 2012 was on its way. It was going to happen. And the article I believe I remember from your conspiracist period was about energy waves being used by the Olympics, I think, or certainly I read on the David Icke forum a lot about how. It comes from the concept of magic and symbols, where you go, the symbol of the thing is the thing, and the more energy, the more focus that's projected towards these symbols, the more powerful the symbols become. And for people not familiar with the conspiracy theory world has this belief that the eye in the triangle, the eye of providence that sits on the back of the dollar bill, that is the sign of the controllers, of the Illuminati, of the baddies. And the 2012 logo was a giant eye in a triangle, I think, if I remember correctly. So everyone was excited.
Yeah, 2 mascots, I think, and both of them only had one eye.
Yeah, they were triangles with eyes in them. Maybe I remember that incorrectly, but I seem to remember that was the case.
And the 2012, you could rearrange to make it say Zion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can.
I remember all these silly little things.
Yeah.
No, we did a massive article, decoding the opening and closing ceremonies of both the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Amazing.
And showing that it was this massive ritual, essentially, this magical spell being put on us.
I don't think that's that far out, anymore. Man. I still like that idea. I don't know that I would believe it to be literally true, but I think spiritual systems are metaphors for the human experience. You can have fun with those ideas. I don't know that it would be literally true. Although more recently, Brent, I don't know if you've seen the attempts to use that kind of research to suggest that it foreshadowed COVID-19. I saw that recently with people saying that the opening ceremony with the NHS, with those huge focus on that.
Yeah.
Danny Boyle directed it, film director.
Yeah, it was.
And sure enough, some people now argue that spell that was cast was the spell of COVID-19.
Yeah, there's a bit where the hospital beds come out and all the nurses are dancing around it. And there's this big, I think it's death. I think it is a big cloaked, hooded figure.
Yep.
Coming over it. And like I said, I wrote an article about it. Well, me and my partner, we wrote these articles about it, and, we broke it down. But yeah, if you look at it on the surface, I think that was wasn't that celebrating UNICEF or something like that? It's about Great Ormond Street.
Right.
That's what it was
Hospital.
about.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. They were trying to protect the children from death.
Yeah.
It does make sense now that I look at it.
There's multiple explanations for these things, isn't there? Yeah.
That is what that section is about.
There's often explanations for these things. And I mean, I don't know. I find that area interesting because one of the things that nudged me slightly towards conspiracy theory, I would say that I'm basically a rational person. I believe in the rational world. I would like not to. It'd be more fun, but it just seems to be the case. The reality is that which still exists, even if you don't believe in it, as Philip K. Dick would say. But I was always fascinated by the rules which we had in broadcasting surrounding the occult and what you could and couldn't discuss, because. And I still think this. I don't think they make sense. I don't think we need those rules. I think we live in a rational society. And I remember the earlier versions when they were justified with baby Jesus as the literal reason for some of the rules in the occult. And I wondered, is that something that you got drawn into? Because I seem to remember that a lot of, if I've got the right person, Brent, because I can't source this, but there was a lot of occult stuff on the David Icke forum, and that's something I still think is interesting, even though it may not literally be true.
No, I think it's still interesting. I don't know. I think this is kind of goes back to one of our first interactions, maybe on Twitter. And you said something about the hand symbols and things like that still make you a bit questioning. What is all this symbology and all that kind of stuff about? And yeah, I ain't got answers for all of it.
No.
I can tell you that. Some stuff is to do with a cult. Like, for instance, some of the stuff that gets said about Jay-Z is kind of true.
Yeah.
It's not completely true. I used to think like he was a full-on Aleister Crowley adherent. So he was either in Thelema or something like that. But essentially, like when he went to record the Black Album with Rick Rubin introduced him to Number 4. And it was just something that he read while he was staying there.
Right.
So that's why he had to do What Thou Wilt hoodie and things like that, just because he thought it was interesting. Nothing that he became an adherent of. But we saw that and we interpreted it through like our lens of thinking, okay, then he must be one. So then we start looking at everything else that he's doing and the pyramids and in the eye and all that sort of hand symbols that he did. You start kind of wrapping it all up together. But I don't understand why I did it. Because I was going to say this to you before, like, you've been involved obviously in Kerrang radio. You've been involved with metal bands like Slipknot and all these kind of other groups. Like, they use all this imagery all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Like, and there's most of the time it's just theater. There's a couple of bands that are like proper hardcore Satanists, but generally there's like atheists, or some of them who even are like believers in some other stuff, but they all play with this occult imagery. And like at the end of the day, like hip hop is, a culture that's born out of lots of other things. Like, so hip hop music basically was, getting 2 turntables and making something else out of it. So other people's instruments became their instrument, and that's how it's built. So that's why loads of old hip hop like has guitars in it and stuff, like, because that was a good sample to use. So they kind of have always brought in other cultures, other art forms. So when hip hop started to kind of play with these occult symbols, it was kind of natural. But I was thinking this was like dark as anything. Yeah, but I don't know why I went that far when I could have just seen, well, that's what we did in metal. I throw out the horns, for Christ's sake.
It's interesting you say that, because when I worked at Kerrang, because I covered conspiracy theories, people would assume I was an intelligence operative or a shill or whatever it is. And, and I enjoyed playing up to that. So I would do if I got pictured or something, I would do the hand symbols because I thought it was funny.
I'm a bit like that now.
Yeah, and also because I'm a fan of a guy called Robert Anton Wilson, who was a writer.
Oh, yeah.
And he played with this as well. And he was involved in a joke religion called Discordianism, who also played with these symbols and pretended to be one of the secret groups that were in charge of the world. Because it's really funny to do that kind of stuff. And I tell you what, I've mentioned his name. Are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson?
Yeah, I am, totally. I haven't read all of his stuff or anything like that. Because I did come across him when I was a truther and thought he was a total jerk, but, because he was making fun of what we believed in. So, but yeah, I'm very well aware of him now.
Yeah. Well, he was also, he held my hand, metaphorically speaking, whilst I was getting into the David Icke stuff all the way through the whole period. And he has an idea which I can't repeat often enough, which is maybe logic. It's not his idea, but he popularized it. And that is that you can't really say which way the world is, ever. You can only say it how it may be. That was always very, very helpful for me. And it always allowed me to enjoy David Icke and these other characters who I didn't fully agree with, obviously, and I could put a maybe at the end of their stuff. Some of it's got merit to it. I mean, some of it's interesting, some of it's nonsense, obviously. I don't know. I thought the word maybe was really useful for me.
Yeah, I say maybe sometimes.
You maybe say maybe sometimes. That's fair enough. So
I prefer to say I don't know.
yeah. No, do you know what? It took me a while to learn that one. I don't know is a very helpful answer to a number of questions because it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's often handy to use the truth as your answer.
If I say maybe, I normally say I don't know before. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. What I think is interesting for me is living in a society where we can hear these points of view and where we can say maybe about a lot of these ideas, even if they are absurd.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, sometimes, like, I've got to say though, sometimes, like, you can be manipulated because of this stuff. Like, okay, like, come on, flat Earth. Yeah, it's like ridiculous, right? It could be fun to just believe in it, but once you start believing that, like, a lot of things go out the window. You know, and the grand conspiracy becomes very real.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, a lot of powerful people are obviously hiding this from you, and then you can become manipulated.
Yeah,
because you're in that kind of idea, and that's sorry. I hate to be a bummer, like, to even when it comes to something fun, but yeah, I don't know, man.
Well, I mean,
I'm struggling with this at the moment.
Well, yeah,
I don't know what to think.
You've had a much more intense experience of it. I mean, for me, flat Earth is just a laughable thing. It doesn't really mean anything. I can talk about it. There's a couple of people I've corresponded with on the podcast who believe in it. You're mates with these guys. Like, you were entertaining them. They were paying to come and... Did they pay to see your gigs? I bet you did them for free, didn't you? How did that all pan out? You know, but they're your mates, and it's a real thing. And I find it hard to relate, first of all, to the 7-7 people that I mentioned who were challenging victims. That strand of our story intensified significantly with the Sandy Hook shootings, where we had Alex Jones alleging that the whole thing was fake, that people were making it up, and then we had people who were listening to him harassing victims, finding out where they lived, accusing them of being shills. These people have been injured. It's impossible to justify. It's cost him a lot of money. I think that seems to me to be the tipping point where you say, I'm out, this isn't fun, this is something I oppose.
Yeah. I mean, all of a sudden overnight, it's just this whole narrative flipped. No longer was it false flags, but it was this hoax. It was these people were crisis actors and all that sort of thing. And I just really, I didn't agree with it. You know, I didn't stop believing what I believed at that time, but I did think I don't agree with most of you people at the minute, and I can't get over that. Like, I don't know how we get over this bit, which is like, it's obvious, isn't it? Come on, they have to kill people.
Yeah.
You know, you're saying that you don't have to. Right? Yeah.
To frame,
and it didn't make sense as well, because they would use the crisis actor pictures, and you could see it's real. Like,
yeah.
And it wasn't just that episode, you know, that episode happened, and then for the rest of 2013, like, other things started happening, Pulse nightclub shooting and other ones, and they would use the same thing in the Boston Marathon bombing. Every single one, like, after that, it was crisis actors. Here, look at this picture. See, it's the same woman from this one, and she was also in Sandy Hook, and now she's here at Boston Marathon. And I could see through that at that point. It's like, this is rubbish. Like, what are you guys saying? I stopped arguing with people over it. That's for sure. I just post my own blogs and do what I want to do, and continue with, like, Truth Music Directory, which is go out and find people that also did this stuff, but, you know, made music.
Mm.
And I just kind of built that kind of thing. I just kind of stopped talking about the false flag stuff to people.
So we've got Sandy Hook happening. We've got Alex Jones's turn. By all accounts, and even I think in his depositions in court, he had mental health problems during that period. And he's pushing the agenda that these attacks are faked because he's pro-gun ownership. So that fed into what he was saying. And my question, what would prove this wrong, was answered when Brexit happened. For me, I had no conception as to how that fitted into the story that I'd been being told since 2001 onwards by conspiracy theorists, which is that we were going to have a global new world order and the European Union was a central component of that. Britain leaving the EU was not on my radar at all. I wasn't doing conspiracy theory. I was working in the media and I was working at talk radio at the time. I was doing production and planning, and I had not seen that coming, and neither had anyone else in the office. No one expected that to happen.
Especially no conspiracy theorists.
No, sir.
That's just wasn't supposed to happen.
No.
Neither was Trump. Trump wasn't supposed to happen either. It should have been Hillary.
I think I was less on board. I less understood the Trump thing, I think, because it wasn't local. But you're right. The theory was we were going to get Hillary Clinton as president, and the EU was going to be ruled by Tony Blair, and the synthesis of government around the world was going to continue. But that hasn't happened. The narrative has changed, and we've witnessed an uprising of nativist populism in America and Britain that simply was not part of that point of view at all. And it made it hard for me to know what to think about my interest in conspiracy theory because it was so undermined by Brexit.
That's interesting, because I thought the same thing.
But it doesn't make any sense, does it? And I will say this now, right? Anyone who's listening to this conversation, as Brent and I speak about it, I explain that. I've never had a decent explanation from anyone. I remember watching David Icke, who, I've checkered history with, but I've read some of his work. And there he is. He's on telly, on his YouTube video or whatever. And I thought, you didn't expect this. You don't know how to react to this. I don't remember him backing the Brexit campaign in any big way, particularly. I don't think anyone considered that as a possibility in the conspiracy theory world. And suddenly it's happened. And for me, the game changed. Now, there was a second swing to conspiracy, which we'll come to with COVID for me. But, really that did feel like the moment when, why would the Illuminati, New World Order, Space Lizards, whoever it is you think are running the world, why would they do that?
It's a good question, mate. You tell me.
So you and I very much on the same page there. Now, we're bringing ourselves nicely up to date here. You have not yet made your break, but your mind is clearly moving away from conspiracism. And we're entering into COVID-19. At what point, though? You just before COVID denounced conspiracism, right? Do you want to talk us through that? You made a very big stand on it, right?
Yeah, well, to be honest, like 2018, I just logged off. I didn't even address it. I logged off all my blogs. I logged off Facebook, and just felt like I wanted to walk away. The things that I would, like you said, Brexit, like I said, Trump, Corbyn taking over the Labour Party, all these things that.
That's an interesting one. Give me a little bit more on that. Why was that the case?
Because he was I always knew him as like the anti-war thorn in the side. Not anyone that like the establishment would get behind.
Yeah.
And witnessing his rise to power, I saw that it was like people. Mm-hmm. It was a people thing, because I was under the impression elections are rigged. Straight up, every single election is always rigged. The winner is always chosen before. It doesn't matter who turns out to vote for what. Your vote literally doesn't count, because the selected nominee will win. Mm-hmm. That's what I always thought. So Corbyn getting in didn't make sense. Trump getting in didn't make sense. It definitely should have been Hillary. Leaving the EU also didn't make sense when we're supposed to have a new world order, one world government. like you said, the rumor always was that Tony Blair was going to be president of the EU, you know. So, because I saw all this happen, I just realized, started to think, I just need to step away, step away from all the people that are on my timeline talking about the conspiracy stuff. It was just, I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't agree. It just felt different, and I just felt like the best thing to do right now is just walk away.
Do you think the scene changed, or do you think you changed?
I felt it was the scene had changed. I felt the whole movement had changed. A little bit before I walked away, like a year or so before I walked away, I thought that maybe a lot of these narratives were, psyops, like installed into the truth movement to make us split up or go separate ways or whatever.
So let me just add there, psychological operations, meaning government funded narratives that are supposed to do an operation on your mind. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought like the hoaxes, the crisis actors, Flat Earth, Mandela effect, the anti-trans stuff and anti-LGBT stuff, all of this kind of stuff was part of like psyops. These things weren't what we all were like believing or fighting for in those previous years. It was all these new things around, basically. I felt we had been infiltrated, and everyone else was believing it. So that's like 2017. And then a year later is like when I do just walk away and start to try and figure out what I want to do. It's kind of burying my head into making instrumental beats and stuff. But I kind of can't find my inspiration at that time. And I just, I kind of go into myself and start burying my head a bit more into like my theology, kind of looking into my religion and stuff a bit more. And I came up with different answers as well that kind of helped me stop believing like in an antichrist and other things that were kind of built up into my conspiracy belief. And over like the next few years, just before COVID, like I'm just breaking everything down.
So I'm under the impression that it would be, is it before COVID that you make your announcement to your audience, or do you use it after COVID that you come out and tell, because you've got, at this point, you've got fans, you've got an audience, you've got people reading your Facebook and reading your social media and turning to you for answers. What point is it that you sack them off?
2 years ago. So it was June 2021.
So you're in.
So it was after COVID, yeah.
Right. Because what I was going to say to you is, as you're telling the story that you move away from it, which is similar to me for similar reasons, but then when COVID happened, now if COVID had happened in 2012, right, we'd have been cooking. It would have all made sense. But unfortunately, it happened in 2020. And when it did happen, I thought, and I said on this podcast, this is it. This is the silver bullet. If conspiracy theory world is true, lockdown will never end. Why would it end? Oh. If they want a global government, a one world currency, and all the other stuff that's supposed to be part of this belief system, why on earth would you, when you have complete control of the population, not ramp up the militarism and the police and so on? Instead, you announce that Boris Johnson's had a party and we're going to stop lockdown, and we're not really sure if it's a good idea. That's not really the ruthless, controlling, brilliant mindset of the Illuminati space wizards. That's more real. That's the sort of thing I recognize that behavior. That's from real life. That.
Yeah.
So I like I say, I wobbled definitely during the COVID period. I wobbled. My old conspiracist me, which has never really seen a public face, came back during that lockdown because it seemed so absurd and it was organised. It seemed like it had been conspired for.
What made you think that?
Because they had a plan to do something which was new to me. I was so. If you'd have asked me in 2019 what happens when there's a terrible breakout disease, if I'd have looked at how they were planning to deal with it, immunologists and so forth, quarantine is how they do it. So they close the borders, they quarantine areas. There's no example in the past of us locking down all of society in order to deal with a disease like that. It's never happened before. So they must have sat in a room somewhere and planned that, surely.
I guess, yeah, stop people moving, innit?
Yeah, but it was an odd one, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't on the radar. It's not, I don't know, I mean, maybe that isn't how you saw it. I mean, but for me, I was really surprised that was the way we were going to deal with it. And that the way in which it was enforced was as authoritarian as a kind of Ikean bestseller, really. Some of it was shocking. I was shocked by it, and I still haven't quite worked out what I think about it. So, for me, I certainly went back into conspiracist mindsets, particularly on bad days during COVID. Did you not?
Okay, no. Short answer, no. There is a moment where I do, but we'll get to that. All right, let's start with
that's the short answer. Let's have the long answer next. Yeah.
Right, lockdowns, that kind of thing. You know, sure, there was no. You know, in previous exercises, that wasn't really thought of. Like you said, quarantining, that sort of protocol was called for. And lockdowns weren't. However, what we were seeing at the time, what I thought at least, was certain countries trying lockdown. And then other countries going, oh, that's a good idea. That will stop everyone moving, like stop the virus essentially transmitting. So I just see it as a rollout as opposed to, oh, this is a plan and everyone's going to do it. Because we saw how it worked in other countries before we did it. Other countries had gone in lockdown way before us, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's because we saw it happen.
Yeah, sure. It took us a while.
We saw it happen in other countries, and we thought, okay, well, this will work or that won't work. You know,
closing the borders wasn't an easy feast either. Yeah, there was certainly a lot of mucking about.
But they didn't really close the borders here, did they?
No, not really. No.
I guess because capitalism, baby.
Yeah, well, and again, this is where the conspiracist mindset comes from, I think. I mean, during that period, I had a friend who went and travelled around Europe, and in the news, we were being told you couldn't travel. And he rang me from the airport. So, well, they didn't check anything. No checks, nothing. And off he went. And and so...
It's because there was no one at work.
Well, it's just real life, isn't it? It's just the news says things and then it's not always right. And that doesn't mean there's a big conspiracy necessarily, but it can happen. And that was the case during COVID. There was a feeling for me. I remember... I was talking about the links between Bill Gates and Epstein on Facebook, which are widely acknowledged. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's certainly widely acknowledged now, but it'd been, I think, been in the press in America. And I'm getting that removed from Facebook. And again, we're not living in a conspiracy theory world, really. But these were all things that I'd imagined in the past. So back in 2007 or 8, I might think, oh, they won't let this message out because it's such a brilliant message. It's not that everyone's bored by it and they've not read it. It's being suppressed somehow. Not true back then. But now, in the actual COVID world, there was something censoring what I was saying in a way that I'd never experienced in my life, ever. And I'd worked in lots of different contexts, in broadcast media, and yet here I am sat in my front room and I can't even write something on Facebook. And... yeah, I had second thoughts, man. I had doubts. I thought maybe the versions of me and you in the past that were worried about space wizards and the Red David Icke, maybe we were right because this was so strange. COVID was so strange. I'd never seen anything like it. A little bit like 9/11. The only reference point I had was that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. 9/11 was such a impactful moment. COVID-19 was as well. The pandemic was such an impactful moment because everyone was affected by it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's those moments in history that make you stop.
Yeah.
That leaves like a scar on you. Everyone's affected by it. So everyone's looking into it, aren't they? You know, and that's obviously why, why COVID conspiracies became so popular in the pandemic, because everyone was affected by it. Everyone wanted answers. And a lot of us like instinctively know, like, yeah, the news doesn't really tell us the full truth, does it? It tells us what they want us to know. And that is true to a certain extent. It doesn't mean they're lying, but it just means they're just telling you the parts they want you to know. And that is still true today. Like, I get obviously accused every day of swallowing the mainstream narrative or parroting it, or, you know, being some cheerleader for the BBC. I'm not. Like, I do look at everything a bit deeper, and I don't believe everything I'm told.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Just because I believe COVID was real, like, doesn't mean I'm swallowing the mainstream narrative.
Yeah, and anyone who checks out your content will see that's not true. I mean, you do talk about actual conspiracy theories. I think you've been misrepresented a little bit, to be honest, by some of the media that I've seen, because I saw them as, it seemed to me that they were using you as a trophy. Like, look at this guy, look at this idiot, what he used to believe. And it wasn't clear what you used to believe from some of the interviews. They just, I felt to me they were being presented a bit as a trophy. So I was pleased when I got your actual content, because it's not as described.
Well, it's a really deep subject. And, like, to be fair, these people don't know anything about it. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help them as well. Trying to help them understand this world. Like, don't fob it off. Don't, like, underestimate it. You know, and so that's why I work with them.
Yeah.
That's why we'll do stuff with them, because I'm trying to, like, bridge that gap.
I mean, what I would say is we've been critical of conspiracy theory in this conversation, but I would also say that I've used it in my life as a kind of low resolution form of futurism. Futurism, for people who don't know, is people who think they can predict the future using tech. And a lot of the stuff that was used during lockdown about tracking and tracing and discussion about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, I'm across that because I was into conspiracy theory. And I looked at the substance behind the theories. I've learned loads from conspiracy theory, in fact. I mean,
Yeah, totally.
no getting around it. You know, I'm not saying I've learned facts or truth, but I've heard some great stories. I mean, Freemasonry, for example, was not something I understood. I knew it existed, and it's been something that I'm not a Freemason. I've no intent of joining, by the way, but it's something that I'm interested in now. It's interesting to read about. It's an aspect of history I didn't previously understand. I would never have ever taken it even remotely seriously without conspiracy theory. Full stop.
Yeah. You become, like, master of useless information when you're a conspiracy theorist, especially, like, history and stuff, mate. I got such a thirst for history because of conspiracy theories, because of talking about, like, how far the Illuminati or the Babylonian Brotherhood goes.
Yeah.
You know, I love history because of it.
French Revolution, that's a cracker. I've watched loads of documentaries on the French Revolution as a direct result of my enjoyment of the David Icke kind of worldview. It's enormous fun. I'm not saying I believe the Illuminati caused the French Revolution, but I wouldn't know anything about the French Revolution had it not been for the conspiracist story about it, which is that the Illuminati set it up. I just wouldn't have had any interest.
Yeah.
So I think there's value to it. And like I say, in terms of technology, there does seem to be some truth to some of these ideas. So, for example, one of the things that people would go mental about back in our day when we were in the conspiracy theory world was getting microchipped. And the idea was that in the Book of Revelations, everyone was going to wear the mark of the beast. Nowadays, the notion of people carrying RFID chips is It's part of the World Economic Forum talk about it. It's not that far out, putting an RFID chip in you and labeling you like a product, like a piece of like cattle. And yet the only reason I'm interested in that and aware of that and aware of the moral concerns and so on is because of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I agree. Like, that's why we know about any of this stuff.
Let me tell you what I'm going to recommend. I recommend that people go through a conspiracy theory period, right? I think it would benefit everybody if they could spend at least a year in the world we've been describing. Don't do any activism. Don't go telling everyone what you think, right? Keep all your opinions to yourself and live in that world for a bit. I feel it helped me understand the world, genuinely, to think, maybe these politicians, maybe they're all lying. Maybe they're all part of the same groups and so on and so forth. It really, really helped my political analysis significantly.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that.
No, I know you wouldn't. Tell me why I'm wrong,
I wouldn't
Brent.
suggest that.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Maybe 20 years ago, I would have, but it's a little bit of a different playing field today. What I would suggest, though, is plug incoming. Listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
It will give you the insight that Nick is talking about here, because you can live vicariously through two ex-truthers who have been through this and come out the other side and can hold your hand down the rabbit hole so you don't get lost.
That's true. Some dare call it conspiracy. Is that the correct title? You vary the title sometimes. Is that the right title?
Yeah, no, it's some dare call it conspiracy. That's the big thing. It's just the different types of shows that we do.
That's right.
Sorry.
highly and warmly recommend it. Brent Lee and Some Dare Call It Conspiracy. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. Do you know what? I've really enjoyed chatting to you. It's refreshed my mind about the world which, I lived in around about 2007 to 8, but never fully admitted how far into it I was. Before I let you go, I'm wondering if there's someone who's listening to us now who thinks that I'm a sellout for talking to you and that you're a shill and all those sorts of things. What would it be in the past? What we would have done if we were trying to convince someone to be a conspiracy theorist? Just say something like research World Trade Center 7 or something like that. That'd be our killer piece of info. What from the other side would you say to someone who is a conspiracist that will bring them back the other way, if you see what I mean? What would you say to them?
Do your research. Keep
where?
going.
How and where, Brent? How and
keep
where?
Going.
Keep going.
Hey, I went so far down that rabbit hole that I had to come out the other side. Like, sometimes that's what it's going to take for some of you.
Well,
that's what it took for me. At the end of the day, that is what it took for me. Just hit me up and let's chat. If you want to have a chat, let's have a chat. Like, we don't have to argue. But if you want to know how I came to certain understandings, I hate sitting there and telling you you're wrong. I hate doing that. I don't want to say you're wrong. I'd rather say well, I believe it's this, or this is why I don't believe that thing. Sure, on Twitter, I'm a bit of a dick, but that is on purpose. All right. That is on purpose. I am trying to rile people up sometimes. At the end of the day, you have to kind of irritate people to get under the skin so that they will talk to me. They will actually start breaking down. You talk to me, yeah. So if anyone else wants to actually go through some stuff, hit me up on DMs and let's have a chat. Don't be a dick to me publicly or I'll be a dick back.
All right, Brent, I'll tell you what I'll do as well is we will put a link to your Twitter account and people can go on there and you can both dick about and it'll be great fun. everyone can be dicks on Twitter.
We can have a bit of banter, all right? Let's establish a bit of a relationship first, and then you can call me all the names under the sun and I will never block you. I'll find it hilarious. I love a bit of banter.
All right. Well, listen, Brent, I've enjoyed chatting to you, and I wish you all the best, man. That was a fun conversation. Thanks for being the first guest on the returning Cult of Nick podcast as well. We're off for a new series, and you are our debut guest. Yeah, next week we're talking about Freemasonry, so that'll be nice. With a Freemason. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Brent Lee. Thanks for being with us, man.
Thank you.